Welcome back, you guys. Tonight we're going to be working on a Glock 19 Gen 5. Really interesting build ahead of us. I had a customer reach out to me. They let me know that they had their Gen 5 19 worked at by a local shop and it really just didn't turn out all that great. So let's discuss the damage that's here. Let's kind of discuss the idea of what we're going to be doing to move forward for the correction, and then of course we'll perform the work. So the first thing that you're going to notice is whoever cut this in a really odd zone. Had they gone down deep enough, obviously we would have hit the plunger hole, because we are well within where the plunger hole is. Usually this is a pretty thin piece of material back here. And then of course we run into the not very deep and broke off not one tap but two taps in the hole. So obviously we're going to have a little bit of a challenge there. We're going to somehow want to fetch those out of there, because we're not going to want to leave those in there and have them crack over time and just break over time. So hopefully I'll be able to cut a new optic slot in the back, and most of those taps will remove themselves. So I'm going to have to take some extra precautionary steps whenever we're doing that, because I don't want the carbide with carbide. And once again, I'm assuming it's either an HSS or it's a carbide tap. I don't know that. So we're going to see exactly how that plays out. So the plan here, move the optic cut to the rear, move the dovetail cut forward. Now, that also poses somewhat of a problem, because usually we come down a certain depth to cut that dovetail. So, but instead of doing the dovetail what would be the normal, starting with the normal height of the slide or the thickness of the slide, we're starting lower. So we still have to cut the same depth, or the iron sight itself, on a lot of them they have some sort of a shelf or a little bit of a tail. There'll be a gap there between where the dovetail is and where that tail is, so there'll be a gap between where the slide would be and that iron sight. So we're going to try to prevent that from happening. I'm going to do my best. First and foremost, we'll cut that optic. We'll see how much of a cleanup we did, how much of this zone we fixed. Yeah, it's going to definitely be an interesting build without a doubt. So I have a pretty solid feeling that we'll be able to salvage most of this to a point of where it'll be really hard to tell. One of the things we're not going to be able to salvage is that it has this front lip here. Even the dovetail won't come that far forward, so I have to get creative on that. I don't want to shave that down all the way to the barrel, because if you do, you're still going to have a ledge over here that's been cut. So we're going to have to get a little creative on that. I want to get all the other pieces of the puzzle kind of set in place, and then we can figure out exactly what we have to do between where the dovetail is going to be and where the barrel is, and just see what our options are. So that's one thing that we're doing. The next thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be making front serrations on the left and right hand side. We are going to be salvaging the text, so we're not going to be cutting through the text. We're going to be working around the text on this Gen 5 today. So guys, I think that's the overall plan here. I think you guys have a pretty solid visual of what we're going to be doing, and I'm going to clean this up and see kind of exactly what it looks like. And before I start cutting, I'll add a couple pictures to this video, so you guys can kind of get a visual of how bad the cut work is and how bad the taps really are. Maybe they'll come out, I don't know, we'll see. But that's kind of where we're at with it. And then of course we'll come back, we'll Cerakote it, we'll get it kind of put back together, and we'll discuss the overall of kind of where we are to where we're going to be. So guys, let's get over to the Tormach 770. Let's go ahead and perform this precision work. Alright guys, well overall I'm pretty pleased with the way that it came out. We ended up chewing up a couple cutters to kind of sort of remove the existing taps. Now this one came out, so the far side, it popped, did a little bit of twisting, snapped off a tooth on one of the 4 flute cutters, and but it came out. And the idea here was that I really wanted it to be removed so I could fill it. I don't have to worry about it coming out after it's been coated, a couple things like that. So now the other issue we have is this one did not come out. I'm really surprised considering how far we've gone down. Every time we go lower, there would be less and less of the tap actually holding inside of the hole. So really surprised that didn't come out. Not 100% sure what we're gonna do with that quite yet. Would love to actually take it out. Once again, I don't want it to pop out later or have an issue under the optic and kind of just rattle around or anything stupid kind of like that. So ideally, removing that existing tap is the way to go. Might bring it over to the laser and just cut it out with a laser. We'll see what we do on that. Front dovetail actually came out pretty good. We brought it down to the 0 of what this is. Once again, if we would have zeroed it from the top side here, then we would have actually had a little bit of a distance between where the shelf is on the bottom of the iron sight, which we'll discuss here in a little bit further as we get into the video. So I went ahead and cut that. We didn't have any issues going into where your plunger hole is. I wasn't sure if we were going to have that issue or not, just because we already had some material taken off the top side. So I just didn't know what we were going to get. Now we're running into the issue of how do we make a nice transition from where the old cut was to where the top of the slide is. So we've got this little hump here. Obviously there's a step down. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and just take a ball nose cutter. I'm gonna go ahead and just do some small serrations through there, kind of like what you would see maybe on the top or the front zone of one of the slides that people would use for cocking or racking the slide. We're basically just gonna use that as more of a decorative fill. So we're gonna have it higher here, then we'll have a couple of serrations, then it'll be lower. It'll be much harder to tell that it's actually off because those serrations will kind of mitigate the high to low. So that's one of the things that we're gonna do now. After that, we're gonna move over and go ahead and do those front serrations on the slide. Then we're probably gonna talk about it, just kind of do an overview of a wrap up. More than likely, I'll cut that out with the laser. We'll color it and we'll bring it back. Alright guys, let's take a look and see exactly how this came out. Obviously we have a couple of things that we still have to clean up here. Let's just kind of talk about it before we get over to the laser. I have decided that I do want to cut that remaining portion of that tap out of the hole, seal those holes up and call it a day. Just kind of wanted to show it to you though before we get to the laser and before we get to coloring it. Wanted to really show you the quality overall. Really nice that we didn't hit what would be the plunger hole down on the bottom side, so that was pretty cool. We didn't hit that. And then we did a little bit of a correction here. We're gonna have to do some sanding work on here just to kind of get it sorted out and sanded out. We've got a little bit of a slope there from the high side to the low side, but overall I think it really fits the design and really kind of masks the mistake that was there before we got the slide. So overall, pretty happy with that. One of the other things I want to talk about, and you guys don't hear me say this a lot because we don't have the opportunity to view this portion of the projects, is that overall the quality that I happen to get off my Tormach 770, and once again I can only speak for myself, is really superb. You know, you get a lot of those guys that are out there that are like, well, if you don't run Haas or you don't run one of the other ones, you're really just not going to get that cut quality and you're really going to be taking longer than it should. Something to take into consideration if you happen to be a gunsmith or do any kind of CNC milling on firearms is that every single one of these is different. So unless you're some kind of a production company that sells slides in the masses, more than likely you're going to find yourself day in and day out doing a different job. So with that being said, you know, the setup time and is going to be the same across the board. You may get a little bit of a faster run time, but you're also coming out of pocket a lot more for a machine that a lot of the guys are going to tell you are going to give you a better cut quality. However, that's just not the truth overall. Now, of course, you know, everybody's opinions and everyone's cut styles and design styles are different. I happen to know my machine. I happen to know what it likes, how it likes, what cutters it likes, speeds and feeds and things of that nature. So maybe I just happen to be that 1 in a million person that have perfected it on the Tormach, but I find that hard to believe. So with that being said, guys, I just kind of want to share that with you. It's a mirror finish. There's absolutely nothing hard here. I mean, we're talking about cutting even through the tap, not showing any chatter or anything like that. And I mean, obviously this is either HSS or some kind of a hardened steel. It could be a carbide tap. I don't know what this was. Obviously I didn't put that in there. But at the end of the day, the machine did not have an issue chewing through that. Now, of course, we'll do some finish work here before we end up going through the process of Cerakoting it, but I just kind of wanted to show you that. Now, I also wanted to show you the front zones. On the right-hand side, there was no text, so we weren't moving, weren't kind of altering the patterns to work around the text. We're basically just creating the same rear on what would be the front. So that's kind of cool, real nice clean there. We'll get that cleaned up and colored over. And then on the left-hand side, we ended up working around what would be the G19 Gen 5 factory text. This is the first time I've had to cut around the factory text on a Gen 5 19. I've done several of the others, them being the 43s and several of the Gen 4s like the 17 and 22s. But this happens to be the first Gen 5 that I've had to do. Overall, pretty pleased with it. We ended up cutting it a little bit deeper than what I normally would to give us a little bit more grip, considering we're not doing full strokes like we are on this side, right? So overall, pretty pleased with that. Guys, what we're gonna do now is I'm gonna take you over to the laser. We're gonna cut this tap out. I think for me, as an individual and as the operator here, deciding on this project, that's the #1 way to go. So we're going to go ahead and cut that out. I'm sorry it's so reflective in here because literally it is so shiny right straight off the machine. So we're going to go ahead and take that over, cut that out. I'm going to do the cleanup work on it, and then when I bring it back, you guys will see it as a final product with black Cerakote finish over it. So let's see exactly how it comes out. All right, guys, let's take a look and see exactly how this came out in the end as our final product. Very pleased with the overall cut finish work that we have here. Basically, you're not going to actually be able to tell that there was any damage done. The 2 screw holes that we had here that were existing prior to the correction were plugged. So we ended up filling those in. We ended up Cerakoting over them. Obviously, it's a different tone because the Cerakote is going to adhere to metal, to plastic, and obviously to filler, slightly different. So you're going to get a different sheen off of it overall, but we're not going to have any issues where that stuff's going to come out or anything like that. Overall, I believe it to be a pretty good fix, and with it being underneath the optic means that almost no one is actually going to be able to see that this was a damaged slide prior to the correction. So definitely overall very pleased with that. This was pretty interesting here. We're going to have a couple pictures that we'll add. Step down, step down, step down, ball nose, little rough step over what we would do for almost like a serration as we discussed earlier in the video. Very pleased with that. Now I ended up doing what I would consider to be a mild or a mid-grade sheen to this. The Gen 5 seemed to come with a little bit of a glare on them, especially like the 19X base styles. That coating on the outside has a little bit of a glare to it. So we ended up adding that back to it, giving it more of that factory image or what you would get. Real pleased overall with that. Front left and right serrations, salvaging the text, working around that zone. Kind of cool there. So I'm glad that we were able to salvage that, claiming that it is a Gen 5, giving that call out as somebody was to show the weapon to somebody else is kind of cool. Guys, if you have not been following the channel, we've had a lot of stuff that's been turned out this year. We have a lot of stuff that's going to be turned out next year. Some of these videos may actually not even come out until 2019 in the beginning. We've had several large shows over the last couple of weeks. A lot of people have come by, set hands on the product, really just put their eyes and hands, look through the optics, the way they're mounted, the overall quality of that. You're going to find a lot of that feedback on our Facebook account. We have a review section specifically designed for that. So if you happen to be somebody that is a new person to the game, you've never had any customization work done, maybe just not sure how to go about that, whether or not you're going with the right person, go on there, read some of those reviews. Those are from individuals that have actually had that work done and have a product back in hand. Instagram is kind of the place to be. That's where a lot of our content ends up getting turned up. It's a little bit quicker to post a picture than it is a video. I've been lacking over the last couple of weeks of doing videos because we've had so much content that's needed to be turned out. So hopefully we'll be able to churn some of those videos out, get some new build content into your hands and give you kind of just a little bit better idea of exactly what is offered. Now, one of the other things is that we do have a web page, okay, NCEngravers.com. Happens to be that a lot of people reach out to us and say, I'm seeing only a handful of packages that you offer. Please take note that if you've seen it on the channel, Instagram, Facebook, or at the gun show, it is offered. There happen to be a couple of things that sometimes they're one-offs. They're a little bit more difficult to replicate over and over again. Those are conversation pieces as to how big your build is, and we may end up turning those out. But 99.5% of the content that makes its way to Instagram, Facebook, or onto our YouTube is offered not only on the slide that it was done on, but also on several other makes and models. So what you're going to find is that there's a lot of companies out there that seem to find that their sweet spot and their comfort zone is with a Glock or an M&P or a CZ, but they don't deviate off the path and cross over into other brands and makes and models. You're also going to find that most of what I do is kind of where my comfort zone is in firearms as a general. So we're going to end up doing a lot of different things, like some of those Berettas, some of those CZs, some of those SIGs. We happen to do a lot of the builds and work on a lot of those slides that the other companies just don't entertain at all. They just don't even want to have a conversation about them because that's not where their sweet spot is. Ours happens to be firearms in general. We like them all. So with that being said, if you have not followed, follow the channel. If you're not following us on Instagram or following us on Facebook, do so. If you've gotten work done and you haven't done a review, leave one. It just happens to be that we have a lot going on, guys. We're a growing business, and you can expect to see a lot more great content. Thanks.